Right, so despite a ceasefire now being in place between Israel and Gaza, and despite the UK government having supported that verbally, even though they did less than nothing to bring it into being, actively backing the side of the aggressors and against the occupied, as we know Starmer and CO have done, God forbid anyone campaign along those very lines, because you might end up facing criminal charges for it. Think I'm joking? Sadly, I'm not. Peace campaigner, writer, peace activist, fellow YouTuber, and someone I consider a good friend, Natalie Strecker, was arrested shortly after returning to her home in Jersey after having spent a short stint in the Middle East where she had joined the protests against Israeli atrocity, calling for a ceasefire, demanding a peaceful resolution, demanding that Israel uphold the international laws it has signed up to, that it has been breaching relentlessly, as we've all become more than familiar with. Strecker was arrested on the basis that she had shown support for a prescribed group. The allegation made at that time, the implication, was that she was seen to have been supportive of Hamas rather than the people of Gaza. Clearly not true. Strecker, more than aware of the law on such matters and the listing of Hamas as a terror organisation in UK law, and yet yesterday, incredulously, news dropped that she was now being charged under Jersey's terrorism law of 2002. Just as we saw with the Met Police aggression against Gaza campaigners in London last Saturday, the Starmer regime is once again demonstrating that it is clamping down on freedom of speech and freedom of expression and freedom of assembly where it comes to supporting Gaza, now muddying the waters between supporting Gaza and Hamas, functionally rendering international law illegal in the UK by doing so. So for anyone still scoffing at such notions, someone may be about to face imprisonment because of it. Right, so Starmer's regime have gone from the sublime to the ridiculous now. It might be Jersey today, and their laws might be ever so slightly different to ours on the UK mainland in some respects, but the Channel Islands are still part of the UK, still have Starmer as their Prime Minister. And so something happening under their terror law, the Jersey Terror Law of 2002, which basically mirrors ours here, the Terrorism Act of 2000, if not overturned, could be seen here in the UK very soon as well. And for what? Protecting Israel again. The victim of what very much is a pro-Israel witch hunt is Jersey-based peace activist Natalie Strecker, who was arrested last November upon her return to Jersey from the Middle East, campaigning for the people of Gaza and against the Israeli genocide, a genocide Starmer's lot cannot even call a genocide, but can, it seems, conflate support for the people of Gaza with supporting Hamas, though. Such is the level of abuse his regime appears prepared to stoop to now to silence those calling Israel out for what they are. Genocidaires, guilty of war crimes and crimes against humanity, very much being investigated for that too, the case proven plausibly already before the International Court of Justice. But clearly Starmer and Co think they know better. The lengths being gone to here, I cannot see as being possible via the police and the legislation as it sits on the statute books alone, without interference from higher up. Police arrived on her doorstep last November and arrested Strecker after receiving a complaint that she was offering support for a prescribed organisation under Article 13.1 of the Terrorism Jersey Law of 2002, which is essentially a carbon copy of the Terrorism Act of 2000, under which we've seen several other arrests and seizures of equipment in recent news, of course, such as the examples of Richard Medhurst or Sarah Wilkinson or Asa Winstanley. Who made the complaint about Strecker? It's a very good question, actually, but at this point, it's a little bit of a moot point. Once an organisation has been proscribed here in the UK, as for example Hamas have been, it is a very low bar to trigger an arrest under those terms. Merely the suspicion of support is sufficient grounds to warrant an arrest, a complaint in this case, though charges under that are a little different. Under international law, the people of Gaza are entitled to resist occupation in any way they see fit. Now, we've seen Hamas take hostages, we've seen armed conflict for years, and I don't agree with such methods because violence never solves anything. We don't support violence. All conflicts end with conversations around tables, but even that isn't possible under the prescription of Hamas under UK law, because that prescription extends to the political wing of Hamas too, not just the militarised wing. The UK, when it proscribed Hamas in 2021, tied its own hands from ever being able to negotiate with them, yet it is negotiation that brought us to this ceasefire. Should the Egyptian or US or Qatari negotiators involved in that be arrestable under UK terror laws for having been part of those talks, therefore? Well, On the face of it, yes, they would be if somebody made a complaint about it and they happened to be in the country. This is the inherent weakness and flaw in this law. And charges, sadly, somehow, are being levied against Strecker now as well, who has now issued a statement on this when the news dropped yesterday. It is with complete disbelief that I confirm that I have today been charged with 2 offences under Jersey's Terrorism Law 2002 for allegedly inviting support for a prescribed organisation. I cannot say much at this stage, but I will say that I absolutely reject these allegations and will fight to clear my name. It is terrifying that this year, as we celebrate the 80th anniversary of our liberation from Nazi occupation and reflect on the sacrifices our grandparents made to achieve our liberation and protect our freedoms, that I, a human rights defender and aspiring pacifist, face charges for advocating for another people subject to occupation and untold suffering. I remain firm in my commitment to the recognition and application of international law, including the European Convention on Human Rights, which seems to be under increasing threat. Our ability to freely express ourselves is a fundamental part of any democracy, and our right to do so is being undermined by this weaponization of legislation. Thank you to all those who have expressed their support. I am eternally grateful to each of you. There is also a letter that supporters of Natalie Strecker have asked well-wishers to send a version of to members of the Jersey legislature calling this out, which is particularly pointed given Jersey's unique history, which Strecker made mention of in her statement there, with terrorism and liberation. Dear members of the Jersey community, I write with deep concern and unwavering support for my friend Natalie Strecker, who is currently under investigation and now charged under Jersey's Terrorism Law 2002 for allegedly supporting prescribed organisations. This investigation is based on publicly available posts in which Natalie has acknowledged the rights of occupied peoples under international law, consistently emphasising that these rights must be respected by all parties. This investigation, targeting her peaceful advocacy for Palestinian liberation, reflects an alarming trend that threatens the cherished freedoms and values upon which Jersey's community and post-war identity have been built. Natalie Strecker has been a tireless advocate for justice and has devoted herself to causes that uplift the disadvantaged. Her support for Palestinian liberation is rooted in her profound sense of morality and justice, particularly the urgent need to protect innocent children caught in conflict. She has never endorsed terrorism, nor supported any prescribed organisations. Instead, she has consistently articulated a position aligned with international law, which recognises the right of occupied peoples to resist occupation. The residents of Jersey are uniquely positioned to understand the moral imperative of resisting oppression. During the Nazi occupation of the island from 1940 to 1945, members of the community resisted the presence of an enemy power, often at great personal risk. Today, Natalie Strecker engages in a peaceful and legitimate protest against the actions of an occupying force. Her activism is a testament to the same spirit of courage and resistance that we honour in Jersey's history. The investigation into and charging of Natalie Strecker not only threatens to tarnish the reputation of a good and honest citizen, but also sets a dangerous precedent with far-reaching implications. It sends a chilling message to those who value free speech, freedom of expression, and the rule of law. By silencing voices like hers, the Jersey authorities risk eroding the very foundations of democracy and liberty that the island holds dear. Article 10 of the European Convention on Human Rights, incorporated into Jersey's domestic law, guarantees the right to freedom of expression. Furthermore, as a signatory to the Genocide Convention, Jersey has an obligation under international law to prevent and speak out against genocide and acts that may lead to it. Silencing Natalie Strecker for highlighting the plight of Palestinians contravenes these obligations and undermines the community's commitment to justice and human rights. The actions being taken against Natalie are not just an attack on one individual, but an affront to the principles that bind the community together. I urge all fellow islanders to recognise the disquieting implications of this investigation. By targeting Natalie, the authorities risk alienating freedom-loving members of our society and betraying the values that have defined Jersey in the post-war era: freedom, justice and resilience against oppression. I call upon the Jersey authorities to cease this unjust investigation and to reaffirm their commitment to protecting the rights and freedoms of all citizens. Natalie Strecker poses no threat, only to those who would prefer silence over accountability. Her bravery in speaking out against the atrocities in Gaza, the West Bank and Lebanon is an extension of the values that the island of Jersey purports to uphold. I stand with Natalie Strecker and call on the people of Jersey to join me in defending her right to express her shock and disgust at the ongoing injustices she observes. To suppress such protest is to endanger the democratic principles that ensure a just and free society for all. I'll link to the contact information should anyone wish to send a version of that letter to them. If you'd like a text copy of that quite lengthy letter, it can be found on Squawkbox's coverage of Natalie Strecker's story, which is entitled Breaking Peace Campaigner Strecker Charged for Supporting International Law on Gaza, which I will also provide a link to. Jersey this year celebrates 80 years of being liberated from the Nazis, as Natalie Strecker said in a statement, and yet one of their own is being treated like this over their support for international law being upheld where it comes to Gaza and the state of Palestine. It is unhinged abuse of power and abuse of our legislation, and we cannot permit it to stand. Solidarity and much love to Natalie. I can't imagine how she feels right now and what she's going through. We witnessed similar arrests and abuse of the law last Saturday as well. The detention of the founder of the Stop the War Coalition, Chris Nynam, and many others as well for taking part in a pro-Gaza peace march, celebrating that same ceasefire the government pretends it supports. But with police actions such as these, how can we possibly believe they really do? Get all the details of what happened in London on this video recommendation here as your suggested next watch. If you aren't alarmed yet, you really ought to be. Please do also hit like, share and subscribe to the channel as well to ensure you don't miss out on new daily content and help support the channel as well, which is very much appreciated. And I will hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.